Hey guys, it's Mr. Schmidt here, and in this video we're going to talk about negative externalities. So if you remember in the last video we talked about marginal social cost, and we said marginal social cost is marginal private cost plus external cost to those not producing or consuming an additional unit of output. Well, in this video, we're going to give a name to those external costs, and you guessed it, it's called a negative externality. So a negative externality is those costs to those people not actually producing or consuming a good, right? So it typically is going to come off of marginal social costs. That's typically where you see it, where it's going to be a negative externality of production. That's typically how you see on the AP exam, but I just want you to know you can have a negative externality with marginal social benefit. The way I phrase it is to let you kind of assume it's with marginal social cost because that's typically how it's presented on the AP exam. And so what I want to do now is show you how would you draw a negative externality. But before I do that, again, an example of this would be pollution, right? So a firm is producing a product. They should bear the cost of the pollution, but the pollution is being bared by other people as well who maybe have a hard time breathing or can't see as they're walking around a major city, whatever the case may be. And remember, because of a negative externality, marginal private cost does not equal marginal social cost. Again, we're referring to negative externalities through the idea of it being on the production side, typically. You don't typically see it on the consumption side on the AP exam. So let's go ahead and talk about this in terms of the graph. So once again, we have quantity and price. We have our demand curve, and that's going to be equal to marginal private benefit and social benefit because we're not doing anything to the consumption of the good here. We're going to just assume that there's no external benefits. Those that are consuming the good are the ones receiving the benefit. And then we're going to go ahead and draw our marginal private cost curve here. And of course, it's always going to be equal to supply because what the private market is supplying is what's out there. And so where those two intersect, where those two intersect, marginal private cost and marginal private benefit is the free market level of output, what's actually being produced. Now, is that what society wants? And the answer here is no, because we're going to put marginal social cost over here, okay? And again, we could assume that this is a product being produced inside of a factory or whatnot. And so we're saying that society, remember, society wants where MSC equals MSB. They want this quantity. And so you can see it's less than the free market quantity. So in other words, we're producing too much right now, right? Society wants us to produce less than what is being produced here. And so this gap between the marginal social cost curve and the marginal private cost curve, that is our negative externality. That is the gap. That is the external cost to society. And we're producing too much, right? So negative externalities typically result in the overproduction of the good. Again, you could see this on the consumption side in real life, but again, for the purposes of the AP exam, typically you just see it with production. So the question is, what can be done about this, right? There's too much being produced. So what you can do is you can impose a per unit tax. In this case, you can impose it on the producers, which would cause them to produce less of the good. That would move the supply curve to the left and make it the marginal social cost curve, in which case QS would now equal the free market quantity, QF1 in this case, because we'll change the free market quantity. Now, if you noticed here, I did say we should impose a per unit tax, not a lump sum tax. Why? Well, remember back in, I believe it was Unit 6, when we did perfect competition, we talked about how when we changed, actually it may have been Unit 5 when we did the cost curves, we talked about this idea of per unit versus lump sum. And we said that if you're changing a marginal curve, which we are here with marginal private cost, we have to use a per unit tax in this case, as opposed to a lump sum tax. Because if we change the lump sum tax, the marginal private cost curve would not shift. So remember, when we want to move the MPC curve, we need a per unit tax in this case to convince the firms to produce less of the good to make it the socially optimal level of output. So that's all for this video on negative externalities. Until next time, have a great day.